The Navy is an extremely important service. The Air Force is important, the Army is important, but again, the Navy is also extremely important. And this again, quite frankly, is a fact that has not always been understood and appreciated in our country. That has changed a lot now. It is still changing. And the undersea domain or the surface domain, the reality is that if you're going to survive economically tomorrow, it may need resources from the sea. If you're going to be protected tomorrow, it need not be only from the land. In fact, it may, very definitely, the danger may come from the sea. So in various ways, this particular domain is very important, and you have been really talking about it for some time. You have called together some of these excellent conferences with domain specialists. I just want to confine myself to a few brief points because before I sign off, and that is that I think if you look at the recent events, there's no need to go back into history. Look, for example, at what Russia has done. And I was listening to Mr. Dutt's excellent presentation on the Russian strategy. The Sea of Azov, for example, the Russian Navy. We see a lot of, television appearances of the land war. But what is much more crucial, I would say, to the final victory, I think the inevitable victory of a much larger country over a small country that somehow has been put in a situation where every week that goes by, it is going to have to sign a worse and worse agreement with Russia. The Russian Navy has been extremely crucial in this. And controlling, for example, access to the Sea of Azov has been a very important part of the strategy. It's also a fact that it has choked off Ukrainian ports. And of course, the Russians are arguing very clearly that you lift sanction on us and we'll allow Ukrainian grain or whatever to flow out. But if you're sanctioning us, we have no option but to consider ourselves in war. And therefore, we are blocking this particular sea, including to grain from out of Ukraine. So that shows again, I would say, a very underappreciated role played by the Russian Navy in what we are seeing play out over Ukraine. Let's go closer home. Let's go a little further away to the Pacific Island. Again, Mr. Dutt, in his very comprehensive presentation, has talked about the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and now we have put the whole thing together into one common construct, the Indo-Pacific, which I think is the right thing to do. Look at the Solomon Islands. A few months ago, the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, a gentleman called Sogavare, he signed an agreement with China, which essentially is a military agreement. So through that agreement, assuming that it really takes off, and frankly, the Sunday Guardian had been warning about this for more than a year and a half, about the danger of the Solomon Islands coming under Chinese military control. It finally has happened. And after it has happened, of course, Australia has woken up, New Zealand has woken up, the United States has woken up. Well, it woke up a little late, but the Chinese have signed that agreement. And that's a very, very dangerous agreement because it enables China to get out of that island chain. Taking over Taiwan would enable to do so, but that risks a huge number of sanctions. And I'm not entirely sure any sensible Chinese leader would want to go through those sanctions unless he's under tremendous pressure at home, domestically. Otherwise, you have seen, for example, the effort on Russia. Well, the effort on China will be equally severe. And of course, the sanctions on Russia have caused massive dislocations in logistics chains and in the global economy. Sanctions on China, while necessary, will cause even greater change. So you have the Solomon Islands, and that is the ocean. It's important because of its location and because the ocean is very important. Closer home, you've got Sri Lanka, a country that has frankly been devastated by its effort at getting close to China. Because where China is concerned, the only relationship that it recognizes is the relationship of a vassal state to the state that is basically controlling it. The Middle Kingdom has to have control, and you have to pay tribute to it. It's happening in the case of Pakistan. There are geographic zones in Pakistan where even a Pakistan minister cannot go unless the Chinese give him prior permission. So the sovereignty in practice is no longer with Pakistan. That sovereignty is with China, and the regrettable fact is it's not even Pakistan territory. It's Indian territory that the Chinese are exercising sovereignty over as a consequence of illegal decisions taken by Pakistan dating right from 1947. But look at Sri Lanka. Look at the fact that China put a lot of pressure on Sri Lanka for this policy of doing away with chemical fertilizer and going in for organic fertilizer. Some Chinese company which is close to the Communist Party of China would have been telling, why not, let's make Sri Lanka a market for our organic fertilizer. And obviously there were individuals in the government of Sri Lanka who were very pro-China. I've said this openly many times, and I say this as somebody who has some acquaintance with the former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. In fact, he was invited to India by me and Dr. Subramanian Swamy, and we had a very good visit. And I'm happy to say Prime Minister Modi spared almost 1 hour of his time, very valuable time, to speak to former President Mahinda Rajapaksa and his son Manipal, who is a young politician. So Sri Lanka has got to take a decision. If it has to be saved, it has got to take a decision on its geopolitical anchoring and mooring. India has taken that decision. Under Prime Minister Modi, it has become an active member of the Quad. And I have argued, in fact, publicly about a week ago in the Sunday Guardian, in a column of mine, that when we talk about the Quad, let's not talk about only 4 countries. Let's talk about 4 foundation principles. So the Quad is a quadrilateral of 4 fundamental principles, which means you can have more countries as part of the Quad. In fact, that's exactly what Mr. Dutt was very correctly saying, that Indonesia may need to be a part of the Quad. Absolutely. Sri Lanka should decide to be an associate member of the Quad. Vietnam should very definitely be invited to be an associate member of the Quad. So you remove this numerical limitation on the Quad membership and make it the 4 principles rather than only 4 members, and the Quad can be immensely powerful. I think Sri Lanka under Gotabaya has more or less on the lines of that choice, because the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa doesn't have the same mindset as Basil Rajapaksa, his elder brother, who's extremely pro-China. I don't want to say anything stronger, but very pro-China. And Mahinda, who frankly is not really very concerned about geopolitics. He's entirely concerned about domestic policy, and geopolitics only to the extent in which domestic policy can be affected. But Gotabaya was, I think, a green card holder. He understands the importance of the Indo-Pacific strategically, and I am very certain that before India opened its heart and its food stocks and its generosity to Sri Lanka, there must have been some discussion about the future alignment of Sri Lanka, alignment away from the new colonial power, which is trying to colonize the country, China, and alignment towards fellow democracies, because Sri Lanka is also a democracy. And here again, why is Sri Lanka important? It's very important, as Arnab, you will understand, and our friends in the Navy who are in this conference will understand very well. It's important for the maritime dimension. Its location in the Indo-Pacific makes it absolutely crucial that it join hands with the democracies and separates from the authoritarian states led by China. It's absolutely essential for the democracies that Sri Lanka be part of the confluence of democracies. It's very essential for China that this not happen. And just as I've long argued, it's absolutely essential for the United States to have India as its most important partner in the Indo-Pacific. And vice versa, it's the most important thing for India to have the US as its most important partner in the Indo-Pacific. For both countries, we are each other's most important partners in ensuring, in Prime Minister Modi's words, a secure, inclusive, free and open Indo-Pacific. So there again, the maritime dimension comes into play. So today, in today's geopolitics as it is evolving, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Ukraine conflict, frankly, I don't understand why NATO has gone to this incredible extent. Because Ukraine, unless you're looking at a land invasion of Russia, Ukraine is of very limited strategic significance to NATO. I frankly don't understand, except that I think it is driven more by sentiment than anything else, and by this perception that Russia may one day become a challenger to the United States. So better to somehow take care of that. And I think the United States, even after 1992, even after Soviet Union collapse, the United States has been working, and the countries in the EU, Germany, France, UK, have been working to weaken Russia. And the only hypothesis I can frame is that they are afraid that if Russia integrates into the EU, if Russia gets more integrated, for example, into the democracies, then Russia will become so powerful economically, it will challenge a certain country on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So it wants to weaken Russia before that happens. The same logic, frankly, that the Chinese have vis-a-vis India. What is China's fear about India? Why has China, one way or the other, seen India as a threat and been hostile to India when India has gone the extra 10,000 miles to be friendly with China? Why? Because the Chinese recognize that India is the one country in Asia that has the capacity of equaling China in terms of comprehensive national power. And that is a fact. So if before that happens, should it ever happen, it will be a disaster. Like for the United States, they see it's a disaster if Russia ever becomes their equal. The Chinese see it as a bigger disaster if India ever becomes their equal. And frankly, we have a terrific chance now, Arnab, because under Cold War 1.0, between the US and the Soviet Union principally, the Chinese were the main beneficiary. What's called in Latin the tertius gaudens, the golden prize of the third country. And they took the most advantage from that Cold War. We can be the tertius gaudens of Cold War 2.0, principally between the US and China. But for that, we need to have very clearly crafted policy. And I'm quite confident Prime Minister Modi, assisted by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar and some of the other very capable cabinet and cabinet level individuals in his government, is going to ensure this. Arnab, just as the 1980s were China's chance, the Cold War 1.0 was China's chance, Cold War 2.0 is India's chance. And in this Cold War, if it becomes kinetic or non-kinetic, the naval dimension, the underwater dimension is going to be absolutely critical. And I want to end by talking about something which I had talked about 20, 25 years ago. And these days, you can go online and check this out. I had suggested more than 2 decades ago that the Kitty Hawk, which I had been to Washington and I had been to the Pentagon, and they said, well, we are decommissioning the Kitty Hawk, 90,000-ton carrier. I said, why are you doing that? Hand it over to India. Give it to India. The Indian Navy will make good use of it for the next 10 years at least, because we know Jugaad, we know how to handle this kind of thing. And in fact, not only Kitty Hawk, about 10 or 20 ships, give it to the Navy, because in terms of finances, and I'm talking 20, 25 years ago, it was very difficult for India to talk about the kind of Navy that India needed. But if you had a Lend-Lease agreement with India, the United States, India could develop a Navy that not only India needs, the United States needs, the democracies need to preserve and protect the Indo-Pacific. Unfortunately, that particular plan did not work. A very strong pro-Pakistan group in the Pentagon torpedoed it. And in India, somehow, there was a misapprehension that this meant that we are going to retreat from the order that was placed for the Admiral Gorshkov, which is not the case at all. We could have easily have gone to a second career. So neither place was there a warm welcome and the whole thing collapsed. But naval cooperation with India and the United States is extremely important. As important as on land and air. And naval cooperation is particularly important in terms, for example, of ensuring that the Indian Navy can punch its potential weight in the Indo-Pacific. And if it does not do so, all the democracies are losers. So I want to say this is a fantastic opportunity for India, for its Quad partners. We are showing Sri Lanka the difference between a country that is trying to colonize it and a difference between a country that regards it in a fraternal fashion. That's the difference between India and China. And I think the Sri Lankans are understanding that. Definitely, I'm happy that some of the Rajapaksas who are unfortunately very friendly to China are no longer the government. I don't think Gotabaya Rajapaksa is in that list. So let's hope that he's not. But he has to de-link and decouple. There is a huge decoupling which is underway from China. Hopefully, a lot of that will come to India. But Sri Lanka has got to decouple for its own survival. And India, I would like to say, we are an essential component of an architecture that can protect democracies and protect sovereignty of countries such as Vietnam. And in this, the maritime dimension is all important. That's why, Arnab, I could not say no to your proposal. I have 3 or 4 lectures, unfortunately. I came to Delhi yesterday after giving a lecture in Pune to about 40, 45 companies, the risk managers on geopolitics. Now, as you can see, professors keep to talk a little too much, and I'd like to stop now. But thank you for giving me the honor of joining this very illustrious group. I wish you all the best. I wish the MRC all the best. And I'm really happy that this is being live streamed, because this is what we need. Public opinion needs to understand the meaning of security. You can't have government operating in a silo. It has to have operating in the full glare of the public, so that the public understand the good work that the government is doing, which in some cases it does not always happen. I am confident under Prime Minister Modi, a true visionary, India is going to get into the superpower league by 2029. India is going to be on track to that by 2024. And one way will be to ensure partnerships in the maritime domain. And you have got, in fact, Ambassador Triguniath here, an absolutely top-class diplomat who knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I'd like to say, I think the MRC should also get itself involved in diplomacy, because I've been saying for 30 years, and may I say only after PM Modi came to power, that this has been taken seriously, that the military, diplomacy via the military, is a very important component of a country's diplomacy. And I'm happy to see this is happening. And I think, Arnab, the MRC also needs to make it happen. With your permission, I'll sign off now and head off back to my lecture. But thank you for inviting me. God bless you. And thank you for inviting me with the stellar team. Take care. God bless you.